afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Browns out in Berea getting ready for the LA Chargers Sunday down at the stadium on the lakefront. Some news from the NFL today. Jameis Winston rewarded for his strong performance against the Ravens, named Week 8's AFC Offensive Player of the Week. Winston's first Player of the Week award since Week 4 of 2019. He's the first Browns quarterback to be named Player of the Week since Baker Mayfield won the award Week 7 of 2020. We're really happy to have Michael Lombardi, former NFL GM, three-time Super Bowl winning NFL executive, host of the GM Shuffle podcast and the Lombardi Line, weekdays on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Michael, I know you watch all of the games and you keep a close eye on this, your work at VSiN. What did you think? What did you see from Jameis Winston at quarterback against the Ravens?
I saw life. I saw a team that came back to life. I saw a team that was on a respirator, that was, had the priest being called in for last rites, and he came in and gave them life. He gave them hope, which is what we've been saying. Look, here's the reality. You're in a town that prides itself on the organization called the Cleveland Browns, pride themselves on being analytical. They pride themselves on saying, hey, we're going to be unique. We're going to spend a lot of money on analytics. We're going to handle this. We think the game is steered towards analytics. We have a full analytics department. Our president knew nothing about football. He's a baseball president, but because he knows analytics, we're going to make him a president. And yet they continue to lie to us and tell us that Deshaun was playing well. When if you're an analytically based company and you believe in the numbers were just unbelievably bad. I mean, up until last week, counting college football and pro football, no team had ever scored less than 20 points other than the Browns. And so to me, it was a joke. It was comedy. It was like, how much longer are you going to tolerate this guy being a bad player? And I think eventually, it took an injury for it to happen, an unfortunate injury, but nonetheless, like last year, it made him a better team. I mean, look, Joe Flacco comes in, he takes the team over, throws the ball down the field. They look like a completely different offense. Alex Van Pelt loses his job over it, because he couldn't get Deshaun Watson to play as well as Joe Flacco. So now they bring in Ken Dorsey, and all of a sudden Ken Dorsey can't get Deshaun to play well either. And then they have the Jameis Winston. Next thing you know, they're moving the football. What's the common denominator here? Watson can't play.
Yeah, so you've been in front offices. You've been in Super Bowl winning front offices. What are the How does that? Who ultimately makes that decision? I guess is what I'm getting at. That we're going to stick with them.
Money makes a decision. Green makes a decision. When you have that kind of investment in a quarterback, you'll convince yourself of anything, which is what they were doing. They were convincing themselves it was always somebody else's fault. Look, applaud them for the boldness that they took to go try to get Watson. They're committed to try to find a franchise quarterback. Don't give them credit for giving him a fully guaranteed contract after his behavior in Houston, which was appallable, which was deplorable, right? I mean, to me, that was, you're rewarding a guy who was really not behaved off the field in the model that you want him to be in, and you go and reward him with the first full-time, fully guaranteed contract in the history of the NFL. Unprecedented to an unprecedented player, right? If you give it to Tom Brady, I get it. You give it to Deshaun Watson after he's had to settle over 20 civil suits, that's probably not the right idea. But they're at their quest to get a quarterback. But now what happened was the cover-up was worse than the play. I mean, they could keep convincing themselves that this guy's a good player, and he wasn't. And there was analytical evidence. And if you're an analytical-based company that you rely on the analytics, how do you keep looking at that and say we're making progress?
So if you were in that front office, at what point in time would you have been? I mean, there's a point in time where if you did it 2 or 3 weeks ago, you still could have saved some semblance of having a chance to make the playoffs this year.
Well, that's the job of the front office, is you have to anticipate problems. You can't react to them. But if you have your head buried in the sand because you've got this guy, look, they doubled down on this contract. They went ahead and guaranteed his base salary so they could get more cap room, and they'll move it into next year so they have it. But, he's impossible to cut. I mean, this is going to be a real problem for them moving forward. And I think to me that they should have recognized it. I mean, he had not played well other than a half against Baltimore, and you've not seen him play well.
So, again, you've been in front offices. What kind of conversations are going on now relative to the quarterback position? Are they looking at, how do we? They can't cut him because, as you said, he's got to be around. But do you try to find a solution where you get competent quarterback play moving forward?
Well, you got to draft one, or you got to think that maybe you think Winston cannot turn the ball over and not be the Jameis Winston where he gives and takes. He tried to last week. We probably wouldn't be this enthused about the Browns if Kyle Hamilton catches that pass. So I think to me that's really the key is, can they continue to get Winston to play at this level? They got to put the Watson thing on the back burner. There's no sense in dealing with it today. The team seems to really become energized. Winston's a tremendous leader. He's a great person. He's had an opportunity to sit around and watch things, and I think he'll improve. Hopefully, this week they play against a Charger team that you can run the football on. And this Charger team is, even though they played well, they're not exactly the 64 Packers. I mean, you can move the football on them a little bit. So I think ultimately, they have to put the Watson thing on the back burner until they get ready. But they could easily, they have a better chance of overcoming the horrible start than the Bengals do, because the Bengals can't play defense. The Browns can play defense.
So, solving the quarterback issue is obviously not. It's not unique to the Browns, but it has been so long. That is what's unique to the Browns. But you look at it, the Russell Wilson trade to the Broncos didn't work out. Now he's playing pretty well. Deshaun Watson trade didn't work out. 49ers give up 3 first-round picks to move up and draft Trey Lance early in the draft, and they get lucky because they pick a guy that's last in the draft who's playing in Brock Purdy. How is it that some franchises seem to be able to find quarterbacks and have a succession plan, and some can't find one?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with scouting inside out. You got to know what you're looking for. You got to have some continuity and some consistency within the framework of your team, right? And I think, to me, the Browns have gone through a lot of changes. I mean, they've been through a lot of general managers, me included. They've been through a lot of coaches, and there's constant change. And I think, to me, they've got to have some stability where you can develop a system of offense where you can plug a player in and find it. I mean, it's really not that hard. Bill Walsh found quarterbacks all the time, whether it was Jeff Garcia, whether it was Joe Montana, then Steve Young, who nobody wanted at the time. They were able to find players because they had a system. They knew what they were looking for in the system, and they found players. It's the same thing that Kyle Shanahan did with Brock Purdy. He has a system of offense. He knows what traits are really important in that system, and he finds them, and he can coach the quarterback. I think, to me, some of these teams that when you go with this analytical base where you're looking strictly at numbers, you miss some of the key components within the scheme framework.
So when your organizations that you were the general manager, when they were looking at quarterbacks, what were traits, what were things that you valued that you wanted to see from guys you were bringing into your organization?
Well, I was fortunate to work for Coach Walsh in San Francisco and Coach Belichick in New England, and then also with him in Cleveland. And I think, you wanted somebody who could be a really good leader. You wanted somebody who could, had great anticipation with the football, who was accurate. And he was the hardest worker on the team, and the team could rally around him, and he made other players better. I think it's hard. You have to be in concert with your coaching staff, because this can't be a decision based on what the quarterback coach wants. This is an organizational philosophy. So Mike Tomlin, Russell Wilson isn't coming in to run Russ's offense. He's not cooking. He's running what the Steelers want to run and how they want to play the game. I think that's really the difference in all this. And when you're a general manager in the league, if you don't have the full authority to really control all those things, it becomes a lot harder.
Michael Lombardi, former NFL GM, 3-time Super Bowl winning NFL executive, host of the GM Shuffle podcast in the Lombardi Line on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. He and I are going to take a quick time out. We will continue talking some league-wide stuff, then dive in a little bit deeper to the Browns-Chargers matchup. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones. Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones. Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns and NFL with Mike Lombardi, a former NFL GM, also hosts the Lombardi Line and the GM Shuffle podcast on VSiN Sports Betting Network. Michael, who are some teams, and again, I know you follow football for your shows, who are some teams in the AFC that you think are going to be in there fighting for that berth in the Super Bowl?
I think Baltimore, a team that Cleveland beat last week, certainly has all the characteristics of a team that can win the Super Bowl. The problem is, they've given up 93 points in the fourth quarter. They've not been able to shut down teams late in the game, and that's been a real issue. So I think that they have to fix that. But their offense and Lamar is playing so well that I think they will be able to get better. And Derrick Henry gives them a full dimension there. Obviously Kansas City's still a problem because Kansas City is so good at finding ways to win the game, even with Patrick Mahomes not playing as well as he's been playing. He's thrown a lot of interceptions. He's not up to the standard that I think that we're used to seeing him play. But certainly they have an opportunity to do that. I think Houston's been injured this year, so they play Thursday night. They lose Stephon Diggs. They need Nico Collins to come back. And if they get him back, their offense plays a lot better. Their defense has played very well and can carry them. So to me, and then there's Buffalo with the great Josh Allen. I mean, Buffalo has played better last week against Seattle. They were really good on defense. Josh Allen, they run the ball. They're physical now. They've kind of taken a game and changed it a little bit in terms of not being 11 personnel. They're more of a 12 team that can run the ball and control it because they figured out we play in Western New York, and you better be physical. You better be tough if you're going to win in that environment. So I think those are the teams that I see are in the upper echelon of the teams. And look, if Cleveland gets anything offensively and Jameis Winston protects the football, their defense is good enough to kind of close this gap and find a way to sneak into this thing. They've just unfortunately waited too long to make the quarterback change.
Yeah, it's amazing. 2 wins, and I think they're only 2.5 behind the Chargers, who are in Cleveland. They're in the 7th spot, the 7th and final playoff spot, so they're 2.5 out of that. The Browns, when you watch the Browns, one of the things that was and I'm curious as to why you think this is, the offensive line I used to think of as physical, and they weren't the first, really, until the hint of physicality came back against the Ravens last week.
Yeah. I mean, they missed. Look, when Bill Callahan walked out of the building, that was going to be tough. I mean, Bill's one of the best line coaches in all of football, and he was able to work miracles last year through all the injuries. And so, it's going to take some time to get it back. But I think last week they showed that they were good. Now, Michael Pierce got hurt, and I think that kind of took away a little bit of the starch within the Ravens defense. Brett Urban got hurt as well. So the couple injuries, I think, helped them a little bit. But that's the key for their team. They're going to have to run the football. Look, you don't want Winston throwing the ball 40 times because that's, he's going to turn it over and it's going to be a problem. So you want to manage him correctly, and he can make plays, and he's got great moxie. The team loves him. They rally around him, which is exactly what you want from your quarterback.
So getting ready to face the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, you know what you're going to get with him. You're going to get a physical team that plays defense. Their offense has kind of struggled a little bit. What have you seen when you've watched the LA Chargers?
Well, look, they played really good complementary football. The numbers are not great. Their numbers don't stand out. You can run the football on them. They have really struggled to throw the ball, and they're not as consistent in the offensive end as they need to be. And I think ultimately they just, they hang in there. They're like Pittsburgh. They hang in there. They're tough. And at the end, in the fourth quarter, they make a few plays. Against the Cardinals, they had an opportunity to win that game. They didn't get a couple calls that should have gone their way. But I think for the most part, they're just really well coached in all three phases. They know who they are. They have a great identity. They're trying to run the football, reduce the clock. Their defense is very good at creating turnovers. Although you can run the football on them, I think that's pretty clear. But what they've done is they control the ball for 32 minutes. and their defense is only on the field for 28 minutes, less than that, actually. So when you want to play good defense, you just play less defense, and that's what the Chargers have been able to do. It's supposed to be a rainy, lovely day in Cleveland. I mean, warm in the sense in the 60s, but there'll be rain. And I think ball security is going to be the most important part, and that's where the Chargers really make out well.
So a couple of questions about some of the receivers the Browns have. What have you seen from Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman, young guy who seems to have kind of come to life after the Amari Cooper trade here?
I mean, honestly, it's been really hard to evaluate anybody on the Browns offense with Watson at quarterback. I mean, there was a time where he couldn't convert it. There were 12 third downs. I think after 6 games they converted. I don't know how you can evaluate anybody, but how you can evaluate them now is they've come to life, right? I mean, all the numbers on Cleveland are you have to throw them out. I mean, Judy's had 50 targets and he's only had 26 catches. Is that his fault? I mean, that's a 44% success rate. That's horrendous. You never want that. Amari Cooper was at 35.8 before he left, right? I mean, Njoku, he's at 41.7 and he's a tight end. I mean, he's a tight end. Tight ends are usually in the high 70s on success rate in terms of targets to catches. So I don't know how you evaluate it. Elijah Moore's at 36%. So, the only guy that actually looked really good is Cedric Tillman. He's had 26 targets for 18 catches. It's 53.8. That's at least somewhere in the neighborhood you need to be in to be successful. So it's really hard to evaluate anybody based on the way the quarterback was playing. This is just more further evidence that the quarterback was bad.
So you have the trade deadline coming up next week. Again, you've been in these situations with organizations. How do you weigh it if you are if you're a Browns fans want to know, are they likely to trade Zadarius Smith? Are they likely to trade Greg Newsome? How do those conversations occur, and what are your thoughts? And that Watson contract is still looming like a big meteor that's going to hit the salary cap at some point in time.
Well, you always are going to need more draft picks because of that meteor that's coming after you. You're going to need economically cheap players because you're going to be restricted on who you can sign. So you're going to want to get as many picks. But I think you have to ask your question, you have the compensatory value of the players. So if you let the guy go in the compensatory, what do I get back based on what am I receiving today? And how does it affect my team? Am I giving up on the season, which I don't think the Browns want to do. I think that Winston gave them some hope. Look, you beat one of the best teams in the AFC. You beat one of the best teams in the NFL at home. It was a struggle. It wasn't pretty, but you did. So that tells me you can compete. Look, you had Philadelphia. You did nothing on offense, and that's a 20-16 game. If Winston plays in that game, you might have won. So, Cincinnati game. I mean, if he plays in a Cincinnati game, Cincinnati scored a touchdown on a kickoff return. They had 14 points. The Browns dominated that game and could have won, but they got no play from their quarterback. Winston came in and gave them life at the end, but if he plays 4 quarters, maybe they win that. So I don't know if you want to give up on the season yet.
Michael Lombardi, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Michael.
Thank you so much.
Michael Lombardi, make sure you check him out, former NFL GM. He is the host of the GM Shuffle podcast, as well as the Lombardi Line. You can catch those weekdays on VSiN, VSIN. That is the Sports Betting Network. Always really good stuff from Michael Lombardi. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby tins. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Do you really think they cared about the fan base? Our two-time coach of the year, playing Deshaun Watson, saying that was the best chance we had of winning. He didn't try anything else. And do you think that garbage we put out there for 7 games was worth it, was caring about the fans? You threw the season away. All you had to do is try this 4 months ago. I'm not saying this is the answer, but it looks better than what we had out there. And he just kept trotting the same thing out there every week, all in the same plays. I mean, at least there was a little more exciting Sunday to watch somebody at least throw the ball and we catch it for touchdowns. We went so long without trying it. I mean, and that's not caring about the fan base. You threw the season away for what? Nothing.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, also co-host All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, Barking Browns podcast. Casey, I don't know if it's reflective of the fan base. If you have that opinion, I understand the thinking. I think you and I probably both said this 2 weeks ago. I was ready to bring Jameis in because whatever we were getting wasn't working. I get that. And, you know, now you kind of scratch your head and go, man, would they have won the Eagles and Bengals game if they'd have brought Winston in? And 4 wins? You're right in the middle of the playoff hunt in the AFC.
Yeah, I agree with half the call. They definitely should have moved the Jameis weeks ago. I think that's a no-brainer. But it isn't because they don't care about the fans. I think the fans need to understand that the organization has to view things through a different lens than the fans do. The fans live week by week, game by game. It's either high or it's low. But if you're overseeing this long-term, like they paid a player a tremendous amount of money and they needed to find out what they had in that investment. And they were following a plan. You can love the plan or you can hate the plan. And we're going to judge it based on how it went, not the process of it. But they had to find out what they had. And they were going to be as good or as bad as Deshaun was going to be this year. That was it. And that sucks for fans to hear. And it sucks for the other guys in the locker room who are putting it on the line each and every week. But because of the injury, now that plan is off and now they've pivoted. And the painful part is we have the proof of concept. Had we not saw what we saw last year with what they were able to do with Flacco, maybe you're more likely to follow the plan longer. But for us, it was like hit the eject button because you know you have a guy on the bench who can at least operate the offense, because it came to a point where I couldn't even evaluate what I was watching because the trigger man wasn't seeing the field and pulling the trigger. So when you have that going on and just taking unnecessary sacks and all this stuff starts to build up and you can't actually evaluate the talent on the field, well, now with a functional signal caller, you can see what you actually have, you know, and it raises the play of everyone, just him being functional, you know, and as a fan, it sucks that we know we had that on the bench and we didn't see it until recently, because if I'm you know, quarterbacking this thing, at the halftime of the Washington game was it for me. That was the time to pull the hook, get the other guy in there and see what you have. And they didn't. And I was actually flabbergasted when they got through the Philly game and elected to start him against Cincinnati at home. For me, that was like, okay, well, they're just going to steer this plane into the mountain and they're just going to be as bad as he's going to be. And, you know, and now we are where we are because he was injured and changed their plan for them.
Yeah. Again, it's, I get it, I guess, but it's going to be an awful long. Tell me that you get it in December if they don't get really, really crazy hot here in the next 5-6 weeks. All right. Jameis Winston rewarded for that game, AFC Offensive Player of the Week. Winston met with the media today, talked about that honor.
It feels like one start. My main focus is getting back out there and having a great practice today. and continuing to lead this offense to do what we're capable of doing.
When you look back at Sunday, what was your own self-evaluation? Where did you feel like you excelled, and where did you feel like, that's not to my standard?
Yeah, I feel like as a team, we ran the football effectively. We made the completions when they were there. We are going to eliminate some things, but we're going to build on the positives, and we're going to keep our mind focused on those positives and build upon that.
Kind of interesting, too. You asked him a me thing and turned it into a team thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that's stuff coaches love to hear. And Jameis it's crazy because he's so entertaining and engaging when he speaks. And it's not performative. He's genuine. He's a genuine person. He's just being himself. So he's gregarious. He's personable. He's got tons of charisma. But like he stares it right to the thing. It's about the team. And he said the thing that I wanted to hear. It's about building. What we saw last week: 334 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's great. You got to build. You got to keep growing. And you have a lot of young playmakers. And if you can keep growing this thing, this could become really explosive. They moved the ball a ton on Sunday. But there were several opportunities to get touchdowns where they took 3 points. They got to change that. When you get to the red zone, you got to come away with 6, and that's life in the NFL. And as long as we're able to keep moving towards that goal, this is going to be a team that's going to be highly explosive, which is something we thought this team could be. That was the whole genesis of this revamping this offense and being more wide open, bringing all these playmakers in, guys who are really good after the catch. But we didn't see that. We didn't see that until this last week. And you're starting to feel better about your pass catchers. You're starting to feel better about your offensive line play. And that's all because your quarterback's just elevating everyone around him.
Yep, got the ball out quickly and delivered it when there was plays to be made. All right, former NFL quarterback Dan Orlovsky from the Rich Eisen show talking about what he saw in Winston's performance against the Ravens.
I think the big thing is, and Jameis kind of intimated it, I believe, after the game in a post game, when he said, "When I'm making consistently great decisions, I'm a very good starting quarterback," and that's really how it played out. Like he made a ton of really good decisions with the football. I think the second thing is he gave guys chances. When you play quarterback, when you play with conviction and you play with confidence, and the literal way that plays itself out, Rich, is you are getting the ball out of your hands quickly. And that makes, so number one, the offensive line has to protect shorter because the ball's coming out. Number two, the most open guys are in the NFL is immediately out of their break. It's not like they get more open after getting out of their cut. And so when you're throwing it with conviction and on time, the receivers have a little bit more space, or they can adjust to the football a little bit. So I think he gave some guys some chances. It could also be said that in my opinion, what the Ravens did specifically at the end of the football game was odd to witness, running 6 straight all-out pressures with man coverage with 2 defensive backs who are starters not in the game. So Jameis was wildly impressive, and he's easy to root for.
And Casey, the 2 things about conviction, and that's what's been missing. That's, if you want me to tell you what I wanted to see from Deshaun Watson that I didn't, those 2 things: confidence and conviction in what he's doing.
And Dan touched on something that's very important. And when he said it, I was just envisioning giving his guys a chance. If you think about that touchdown up the seam to Njoku, it's a back shoulder. Dave's not necessarily even open, but giving his guys a chance and throwing it away from the defender, but towards his guy. And what did Dave do? Make a freakishly athletic catch and falls into the end zone. We knew the playmakers were there. We just they weren't given the opportunities to make these kind of plays, and you're getting to see it come to fruition. Even Elijah Moore's usage, when you see him getting loose on the outside and he's getting the ball right out of his break, that ball is coming out. And Jameis isn't a one ball type of thrower. It's not all just flamethrowers. He's feathering some in, some have arc, some have velocity when he needs it. You're seeing all different kind of things, but you're seeing a very catchable football. And as a playmaker on the outside, that's all you can ask for. Is a guy who's going to give you an opportunity and throw you a catchable ball. And the thing about Jameis is something we saw last year with Joe, everyone gets an opportunity. Jameis, even the defenders, So there's going to be plays made. Yeah. It's never going to be boring, but he's never going to shy away, and he's living play to play. And when we talk about his decision making, that's always been the thing that's been kind of questionable, because the talent's been there since he's 17 years old. I was the #1 high school recruit coming out. He's been that guy. He's excelled at every level, but his decision making has been questionable at times as a professional. If he lives play to play and plays with instruction within the play, this is sustainable to me just because of who he is. And as long as his mentality is right, this offense is set up for him to be successful.
Yeah, a lot of the same things we said about Joe Flacco. And Kevin Stefanski tends to coach people that have those issues and kind of drills down and gets them to play a little bit better. So we'll see. Some practice news. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah ruled out, so he will not be going against the Chargers. Zadarius Smith, Denzel Ward, still concussion protocol. Joel Bitonio, Jordan Hicks, also not practicing today. Ward, they said we'll see, was the answer. So not going to have JOK. If you don't have Denzel Ward, that concerns me, because I don't know about you. I have some concerns with Newsome and Emerson this year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is that weird sweet spot where you're one game in front of the bye. So I'm anticipating not seeing either of those players, to be honest with you. Obviously JOK, even if he were to be medically cleared, I don't see the need to rush him out there for this one game with the bye on the other side. No matter what, I think you're gonna let these guys get as healthy as possible. And Denzel, the concussion thing is completely different because he has a history of them. This is his 6th documented concussion. So it's you're getting in scary territory. So even if he clears protocol, I don't see them rushing him out there. If the bye was 2 or 3 weeks away, maybe it's a different conversation. But with the bye just on the other side of this game, I don't think you're taking any unnecessary risk with stars.
Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, also co-host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, Dave, and all my peeps in the chat. This is Guitar Chic, or Galen Parma. And what I'm calling about is I had a crazy thought today. There's no way the Browns can possibly roll out Watson when he's healthy. This fan base will have a major revolt. But I was thinking Kirk Cousins has a similar amount on his contract. Now, I'm not good with numbers, but this is just a question for you all. And Atlanta, if I remember correctly, really wanted Watson. I wonder if sometime, probably not this year, if next year, they could swap quarterbacks, Watson for Cousins, give him a fresh start in Atlanta where he really wanted to be anyway, and Cousins to Cleveland as a bridge quarterback. Their contracts seem similar. What do you think about that? Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Go Browns! Woof, woof!
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, I love the thought. I don't think nobody's taken Deshaun Watson in a trade. And they have Michael Penix, who they took higher than most people thought he would go in the draft. I don't think anybody's taken that contract to Deshaun Watson's, unfortunately.
Yeah, I love the thought myself. It's just the blowback. Every other NFL team, all 31, saw what happened to us and the blowback that the Browns received when they traded for him, and then the things that have ensued since then and his play. And honestly, if you were going to be able to pull off a trade with Deshaun Watson, you're going to have to package more than one first rounder, in my opinion, to get rid of him. So it's just expounding a problem. You've already given up 3 first rounders and other draft picks, in the 2nd and 4th rounds, so on and so on. But if you have to package 2 more firsts just to get rid of him, in my opinion, I'd rather play 52 guys. I'd rather just pay him to stay home, pay him his 45. You're just making it worse by trying that. But if you could get someone to do it, let's see how that goes.
Yeah, I don't. There are now rules from the players' union, I think. So I don't know if they can do that. We'll have to see because I'm with you. Again, you're coming. A guy that relied on his athleticism now has a shoulder 1 year, an Achilles another year. He's going to have to play from in the pocket. We haven't seen any evidence that it's no. I've seen that movie for 6 or 7 weeks, and I don't want to see the second, third chapter of it. I'm good. So Greg Williams, former Browns defensive coordinator, has now a podcast. Come Get Some with Greg and Blake Williams. Talked about what he saw from Jameis Winston that he liked.
Well, how about the quarterback just doing his job and understanding where his plant foot is every time in the pocket, which creates the pocket mechanics that the offensive line played pretty damn good, didn't they? Okay, it's amazing how much better the offensive line knew what spot they protecting, and also get it out of your hand, get it out of your hand. It was the same route concepts, same run concepts, high-low, outside vertical stretch, middle vertical stretch, and then boom, boom, boom. Okay, Jameis hitting the open receiver. And it was fun to watch. It really was.
And Casey, that's kind of, with confidence and conviction. So the other thing that Orlovsky, the point that he made that was really good, guys are most open when they come out of their break. That's you gotta that when they say you have to throw them open, there's a time and it's a window and it doesn't last long. And Jameis was hitting it more often than not.
Yeah, he's a very good anticipatory thrower of the football, and that comes from just recognition and understanding the operations and the offense to a T, knowing every nuance of the depth, and it comes to time on task. And we keep glossing over the fact that throughout like the spring and summer, he was QB1. He's gotten to work with these guys. It wasn't like he's just been forgotten. And during the season since Deshaun came back, in training camp. And he's taken a back seat, but he got all that work, and he's present in those meetings. You know that he's not just taking anything for granted. He's dialed in as if he was the starter this entire time, and that preparation pays off when you get your opportunity. And that's what you're seeing. He understands this offense. He understands the breaks. He understands leverage, and he knows how to get the ball out. And to Greg's point, that is massive for the offensive line. Everything's on time. And because in the NFL, 3 seconds is a lifetime. For these athletes to get to the quarterback. So if you can only have to protect for 2.75, that is so much different than you have to protect here for 2 seconds and then over here for another 2 seconds because your quarterback's just moving erratically. You don't get that out of Jameis. Things are going to be on time. Now, some things are going to be on him to identify blitzes and understand when the ball has to come out in hot routes. And we saw that on the strip sack that we got at the end of the first half from Kyle Hamilton. So there's going to be things to clean up. But overall, you like the operation. You like how clean it was. You like how fast he got to the line of scrimmage and was able to identify things. And that gave them opportunities to change things and mix up protections and things you just weren't seeing in the previous 7 weeks.
So this is from your stock report of the Browns after that much-needed win in Week 8. You can check that out on the Orange and Brown report. Stock up, Jameis Winston, Mahmoud Diabate, Cedric Tillman, honorable mentions, stock up, Michael Hall Jr., Dante Foreman, Elijah Moore, Ogbo Okunrankwo, stock down, Greg Newsome. So we've talked a lot about Winston. Diabate is a guy, and Tillman, both of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could talk about Winston for another 2 hours if we had to. But yeah, Diabate, I think just his evolution as a player needs to be studied. We're talking about a guy in college who was primarily an outside rush backer, and he did a little bit of off-ball stuff at Utah, but to see him blossom now, because when we saw him last preseason, he was just winning with like raw athleticism and instinct. But now we're seeing it play off with functionality and being able to read his keys and trigger downhill. And it was something to see this last week, just how fast he is, and be able to utilize that. And then if you've seen how they played him, he had 59 reps on defense, 50 came at off ball backer, but then he also played a little bit of edge. He played 5 snaps as a safety. It's when you have a player that's that athletic that you can kind of move around a little bit with all the other chess pieces you have, with Delpit and JOK, and with JOK looking like he's going to miss a little bit of time at minimum, to have a player that athletic to kind of plug in there, and if they get Jordan Hicks back and Devin Bush, you could see that linebacker crew kind of surviving without JOK for a game or two, but a lot of that's due to the evolution of Diabate. And we're talking about evolution. man, we saw a ton out of Tillman these last 2 weeks. But this last week was really eye-opening because we're talking about a player that when he came out of Tennessee, my only knock on him was he was injured a lot at Tennessee. And a lot of those ankle stuff, groin stuff that, you can get through some soft tissue stuff. You're going to have some nicks. You're going to be down for a little bit, but he missed a lot of games. But you went and got him because of his size and his physicality. And when you watch at Tennessee, very limited route tree. We're talking smoke screens, slants, and go balls. Well, he was very good at those things. Well, we saw that play out. You see him catch a short slant, turn up field, and run straight through a free safety's attempted tackle, walk right into the end zone, just displayed the physicality. And then you see it on the go-ahead touchdown. He lines up in the slot, pushes vertically at his safety, gives a head nod, and just gets even, and Jameis just let it go. And he just beats him to the end zone, catches it on the goal line, finishes. He's a playmaker, and you can't have enough of those on your team, and it's just so good to see development from that position because that's something we've lacked, is drafting a guy and actually seeing him develop. And you're getting to see it right in front of your eyes. So it feels good to see Tillman start to come into his own, and he's just only going to continue to get more opportunities with Jameis.
All right, before we go to break, this is from ESPN, and it's kind of interesting. So the Browns, the Football Power Index ranking 16, so right in the middle. Chances to make the playoffs, 9.3%. Chances to win their division, 0.6. What we know, the Browns' investment in Deshaun Watson backfired. Cleveland 1-5 with Watson playing the worst football of his career before he tore his Achilles in a Week 7 loss. In 3 years, Cleveland is now left with 19 starts from Watson, consecutive season-ending injuries. Casey, the part of that I find incredible is there's a 10% chance to make the playoffs with as bad as they've played.
You and me, Dave. I saw that and I was like, so you're saying there's a chance? That's all you got to worry about. Considering the hole they dug themselves into, and they didn't have to do that. They chose that. But this is their starting point now. And this is funny because we had Greg on just the last segment, but like, this feels very reminiscent to that 2018 when it was like 2 seasons.
Yeah.
You had the first half with Hugh, and then you made the change, and it was a whole that second season was like a different life, and I feel they have that opportunity here as well. And it's about stacking wins. You obviously you got to do it one win at a time, but you're playing a team this week who, if the playoffs started today, they're in the 7th seed. So you take it to them. They're not a world beater. They have elements that make them dangerous, but like you could. Right there, that's a tiebreaker, and then you got New Orleans coming out of the bye. They started off on fire, but that's not the team they are right now, and Denver, who's better than I thought they would be, self-admittedly. Got to go there on Monday night. It's a tough place. You also got Pittsburgh before that at home on a Thursday. You start to see where they could pick up some momentum, and if you win the next 3-4 games, and didn't completely erase the hole you dug yourself into. But it gives you a chance down the backstretch. And I think that this team, if they can just get to that point and play meaningful football in the month of December, I would consider that a victory from where the season started.
Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take another time out. Other side of the break, Brian Baldinger, a Baldy breakdown of Jameis Winston. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report and the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Former NFL offensive lineman Brian Baldinger, film breakdown of some of the things he saw from Jameis Winston against the Ravens.
Let's just look at some of these plays. A lot of play action right here. The line's moving like an amoeba right here. They're all moving together. Jameis stands in there, stands tall, finds one open receiver after another. Jerry Jeudy looking fast and athletic. All right, now you get this touchdown right here. Like the Ravens can't get lined up right here. All right, they blow a fuse. You know, Jameis Winston will kill him, destroy him with said Tillman going in there for 22 yards. All right, now we get this right here. Here we go. Coming down, one good-looking pass after another. And it starts with protection. Look at Wyatt Teller right here, just anchoring down right here. That could get him back in the lineup. This shot to Elijah Moore on the outside. Beautiful. What a part he was in this offense.
And Casey, the thing that you're seeing is those were not like wide open throws, and there were a couple of them that he just threw through the coverage basically.
Yeah, just understood the leverage and threw it to the only place where his guy could get it, and the defense couldn't. You know, it's all, like I said, it's all different types of throws. We've seen him feather some in for that rifle on that out to Moore. Like there's no room for error on that play, and you have to gun that in there. He has all that in his bag, you know, and it's all from within the pocket, and none of there's no tell. He didn't have to load up. He's supremely talented as a thrower of the football, and he was making good decisions. Now there were a few. Probably 3 you could count. There were turnover-worthy footballs, you know, and the Ravens just didn't come down with them. And that happened on the other side of the ball too. People gloss over that, but it's with Jameis, it's always going to be a sticking point because of his history, because of throwing 30 interceptions in 2019, you know, with 30 touchdowns and 5,000 yards. You know, that's always going to follow him. So people are going to look for that. But if he could just cut down on those, I think, you know, you're in a good position here. With what he's able to do, his understanding of the offense, and he just makes players better around him. This whole offseason we talked about when they signed Jerry Jeudy. Well, what does Jerry Jeudy do well? He's really good after the catch, but we hadn't seen that at all this season because he had not been given an opportunity to run with the football after he catches it. Everything's like, if he's able to catch it, it's dead right where the ball is. But when you saw him run that shallow cross and get it and turn upfield, you start to see what could be. You know, and then you just pocket that. You're gonna see a lot more of Jeudy running those crossers. I can guarantee you that as the season progresses, because James can get it to you and when you're upfield shoulder and just let you turn and run with it. So you're going to start to see that implemented more in this offense.
All right, Dan Orlovsky, former NFL quarterback from the Rich Eisen Show, asked if Winston's play from the Ravens game is sustainable.
I don't think that performance is sustainable. Because again, I think teams are going to play a little bit more tactical in certain situations, a little bit more measured. You know, when you're getting all out pressure, it's like just throw it to a guy and hopefully he wins, or you could block it up, or you make a play in space. I think teams will be a little bit more reserved with kind of the coverages that what they want to play. Again, he gave guys chances in one-on-one situations. The Njoku touchdown, he makes the play. Those aren't consistently plays that are going to get made. You know, that's just not the NFL. It's just throwing it up for grabs. And I don't want to say he did that, but you're not constantly going to win those one-on-one kind of 50-50 balls. So I do believe an uptick of performance when in comparison to what Deshaun was doing. Absolutely. I don't know if they're going to go score 30 a game, and that's sustainable now.
Well, and the unstated there is teams came after him and blitzed him so much because the Browns couldn't handle that. So they handled that. So it should open up some other things that occur because they aren't going to come after him like that.
Yeah, teams will come after you until you prove you have an answer. And after you do that so consistently, they'll back off from it and pick and choose their spots. And you'll see this week, you'll see a few blitzes here or there. The Chargers are very aggressive in their own right, but they can get after it with a natural pass rush. But he's right. You're going to start to see a mixing of coverages. The teams are going to, you know, but we're talking about a player who has now 81 starts, I believe. Like, he's seen pretty much everything you could throw at him in the NFL, you know. So it's finding answers. That's all this is. It's problem solving at the highest level. You know, so as long as he's able to evolve and keep doing that week by week, because people's game plans are going to change, and the more stuff he puts on tape, the more, and especially with they kind of match it up to the playmakers that Cleveland has and how to take certain guys out of what they do, you still have to find answers. But we're also talking about this from an aspect of we saw what the Browns were able to do last year with Flacco, but a lot of that was out of necessity because they couldn't run the football. I think this team's going to be able to run the football now. And that changes the whole game plan. So it's not always going to be on Jameis to do all these miracles. When you got Nick Chubb, you get Jerome Ford back. This line's blocking better. Teams have to respect, and they can't just load up the box because you can get loose on the outside. So it's a symbiotic relationship. So if they start running the football better, I don't think it's all about, you know, what can Jameis do and what he can't do. It's about just operating the offense.
Yeah, and, you know, to that point, this week, Chargers' run defense is not as good as their pass defense. This is interesting as well. So this is from the 33rd team. Biggest needs for every NFL team at midseason. Browns, they go quarterback, offensive tackle, cornerback, and running back. Unless Jameis Winston is the next Geno Smith, Browns need a young quarterback after the Deshaun Watson disaster. Both tackle positions have struggled, and adding a viable starting option to ease the workload on Nick Chubb makes sense. Denzel Ward's 6th concussion also puts his future in doubt. I think you could probably throw wide receiver on there as well, just based on, do we know what Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman are at this point? They look better.
Well, that's the beauty of making the move when you're now, because now we actually get to evaluate that. If you would have made this list last week, those are, you can't even defense that. Like, yes, they need a quarterback, they need offensive tackle, they need wide receivers. Well, now we've seen with a functional quarterback in, you actually get to evaluate and see what the priority needs to be when you look at those things. If we get another 2 or 3 games of DeWanda left tackle, do you still feel strongly that you have to lean that direction? In my opinion, you might want to go guard first, because Joel might not be here next year, and you start to change your processes. Wide receivers the same way. There's several in the draft I like, but every year is a good year to draft a receiver, the way these kids are developing coming in. So you're going to pick up a receiver more than likely, but how high do you need to do that? And when I was reading that thing, it was saying unless Jameis is Geno Smith, and you need to get a young quarterback. Even if he is Geno, which I think is kind of selling Jameis short, I think he has a higher ceiling, probably a lower floor, you still need to go get a young quarterback. That's regardless of what Jameis is or isn't, you need to keep developing that position. I don't care what team you are, you need, unless you got one of those, unless you got Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and even now, 5 years from now, they've got to do the same thing that I'm talking about right now. Always go get a guy, bring him in, and let him grow in your system and see if you can strike gold, But the cornerback one, that's one to keep an eye on. We know how this team prioritizes that one. That is one that, with Denzel's concussion history, with the regression of Newsome, the slight slippage in play from Emerson too, you got to think about the future, and they've done that every year, and we're going to see what Cam Mitchell has this week. So you got to keep stock in that position, but that's one that I would not be shocked if they take a cornerback in the first 2 rounds.
Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, the Barking Browns podcast, and I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. We continue talking Browns sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s, $10 each. 10 times multipliers, 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report. Mike Tannenbaum, former NFL general manager, on the call he would make at the trade deadline, the first one he'd make if he was the general manager of the Detroit Lions.
This is easy. It's Myles Garrett, and I'm Brad Holmes, and I'm calling you up, Cleveland. I'm saying, look, we are not negotiating. Myles Garrett is a Detroit Lion. Here it is. Just fill in the paperwork and let me know. Look, does it matter if it's 2 or 3 ones? Like, if I'm Detroit, Aiden Hutchinson, I know what they said, but let's assume he's not coming back. But imagine Myles Garrett and Aiden Hutchinson in 2025. Yeah. To me, he's outcome determinative of them legitimately having a chance to win the Super Bowl this year. So that price to me isn't too high. Like, I would do everything I could if I was Detroit to try to pry Myles Garrett from them.
Casey, that's I understand that. I would be surprised if they moved on from Myles Garrett. Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. I don't think they view this as a huge, and it's a bigger rebuild than most, but I don't think they look like it's going to be another 4 years before they're competitive again. And if you trade Myles Garrett, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm even going to swap the word rebuild with pivot. There needs to be a pivot. There's going to be a philosophical shift, and you might have to move on from some players, but a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer still in his prime, not doing that. Maybe I feel different in 3 years. Maybe I do. But right now, here today, I'm not entertaining that. It's just because if you do get 2 ones, the hit rate on first round picks, especially if you're talking about the Detroit Lions. So those picks are going to be what, in the upper 20s?
Yeah.
That's different to me. The hit rate of a first round pick is less than 50% as is, so the chances of you drafting another surefire first ballot Hall of Famer, pretty low, so it would have to be a crazy ransom for me to entertain moving on from Myles Garrett in his physical prime. That's something I'm not willing to do, and I doubt that Andrew Berry is either.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. All right, Jameis Winston and the Browns trying to do something that no other team or quarterback have done. They're trying to become the first team and quarterback with Jameis Winston to defeat head coaching brothers in consecutive weeks. Yeah, I know we're digging deep on this one. Winston talked about the Ravens and Chargers defenses.
Very similar conceptually in terms of their coverages and everything. Personnel, when you got Khalil Mack, you have Joey Bosa, you have great interior guys, great linebacker group, great DBs. I know one of them personally, Derwin James. He's a beast. Man, I believe in us. I believe that we're a great physical team. I believe in Nick Chubb. I believe in Wyatt Teller. I believe in Ethan Poick. I believe in Joe Batonio. Like, our guys are physical. Our guys are up for the challenge, and I think that's what football is. They're gonna have guys. They got some good guys, but I believe in my guys.
Again, you like hearing that. That's the message that you want coming out of your quarterback.
Yeah, I pumped my fist when he said that earlier. That's what you want to hear. Is because every team's got good guys. You got to believe in your guys. You got to believe that you're going to be able to execute and get things done. But it's funny because last night on the Barking Browns, which you can catch 8 p.m. on Tuesday on YouTube, you should subscribe. I brought up that question out of nowhere. It just hit me. I was like, has anybody beat those two brothers back-to-back weeks? And thank you for CBS Sports for doing the legwork for me, because I did not know the answer. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities when you look. There's a lot of like cross-pollination between coaching staffs when you look at those two brothers. So you're going to see a lot of similar concepts. I think the Chargers have a better defense and a less dangerous offense, but there's a lot of similarities between the two. And I feel better about my chances than I probably would have 2 weeks ago. Put it that way.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the Chargers, I think they're 4-3. I think they had their bye already. But at 2-6, that's you kind of alluded to it. This is a tiebreaker game. You get the win on the Chargers. That's like an extra half game. You end up tied with them. You knock them down. This is interesting as well. So this comes from Mac. We use his tweets all the time. Could we see a big game from Nick Chubb against the LA Chargers? 71 of his 74 yards this year are after contact. A guy coming off a major knee surgery, 71 of his 74 after contact. Mentioned Chargers struggle. They are giving up almost 5 yards per carry against the run, 25th in the NFL. Chubb's highest career yards per carry any team is against the Chargers, 7.8. Kevin Stefanski on if Nick Chubb is ready for a heavier workload Sunday. What he said was, he likes Chubb in any system and anything like that. So, he said, he's making another week's progress.
Yeah, and if you just look what he was able to do in the last game, he's doing some Nick Chubb-like things in there, in the hole, jump cutting, and you're starting to see him get more comfortable pressing the hole, making decisions. His vision's awesome, and he's going to break one. I seem to think that his best play will come after the bye as he continues to get his legs under him and gets more reps of this offensive line and the timing of everything. But I do want to shout him out for one thing. When you're going back and watching this all 22, Nick Chubb in pass protection was amazing on Sunday. So many times he would step up and just take on the blitzer and just cut it off at the root. And that's so crucial to have a back you can count on to do that. Now, he's not a traditional third down back. Obviously he can catch a football, but he's not a route runner. So but if you keep him in for protection, he's stout. And that gives Jameis the ability to step up in a pocket and know something's getting picked up. That's invaluable. And for him to be able to kind of just step back into that role, I feel good about it, and obviously we're asking a ton out of the young man, everything he's came back from, and to come to a team that was doing terrible when he got back, and for the vibes to be uplifted with everything now, Nick Chubb is a huge part of that, and he is going to break. And then it'll be sooner rather than later. And I hope it's this Sunday in front of the home fans so he can feel that love when it happens. But he's starting to look a lot more like Nick Chubb, and I think that's just increases week by week.
Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report. He is also the co-host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.